Hello, BookTube. This is Weekly Reads. My reading week this week has been okay. I spent most of the reading week reading Crusaders, an epic history of the wars for the Holy Lands by Dan Jones. This is a history of the Crusades, the centuries-long conflicts between Christians and Muslims, Jews, polytheistic Northern Europeans, and fellow Christians. The Crusades lasted centuries and in various locations. The Crusades started in the mid-11th century with the beginnings of the Reconquista, the centuries-long conflict between the northern Christian kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula and the Muslim southern kingdoms, which ended in the late 15th century. Also, the conflicts in the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa, again between Christian Europe or Christian Western Europe and the Islamic dynasties, as well as for a number of centuries in northeastern Europe against various pagan peoples or polytheistic peoples, and also against Jews, particularly during the land routes to the Byzantine Empire. Dan Jones really focuses dating his Crusades from the mid-11th century and the late 15th century. So the Reconquista bookends the more noted Crusades in the Eastern Mediterranean. The book's okay, which I guess in a way is disappointing because I've heard a lot of good things about Dan Jones' writing, although I didn't see it. In fact, when I first started the book, it really put me off. There's a scene that opens the introduction about a young couple in Wales who listened to a wandering bishop recruiting for one of the Crusades. And the husband wishes to join the crusade, while his wife urges him not to go, that she needs him here at home with her. And that night, the wife dreams of Jesus, and he berates her for preventing her husband from joining crusade. And over the night, the wife accidentally rolls over and smothers her infant newborn. And then the next day, remorseful of what happened, they go to the bishop, tell him what happened, and she sews the cross onto her husband's clothing. I don't see the reason for opening with that. What's the point of that opening, of having that scene in that opening? I don't see it. And then in the first chapter, the scene opens with, the chapter opens with a scene of Roger the First of Sicily being pitched the idea of invading North Africa, and he's very dismissive of it. And it's written in a very historical fiction-y way that I really don't like. And so there's quite a bit of scenes interspersed throughout the book that I don't quite really see the point of including, that it doesn't really add anything to the overall narrative. Although I guess it maybe gives other perspectives, although almost all of these perspectives will be Christian rather than Muslim or Jewish or polytheistic Northern European. So the book, it's just okay. And I'm glad I read it. I'd been meaning to get to this book for a very long time, so I'm happy I managed to read this without bailing on it. Although that beginning was very tempting. After I finished Crusaders, which took a little bit longer than I thought, I read it over the weekend and Monday and Tuesday, which left me Wednesday to read something else before my May reading kicked in. And so I reread Sibilance by Sally Van Doren, which is a slim volume of poetry that I quite like. It's pretty good. And starting yesterday and into today, I read some stories in Weird Tales, edited by Marvin, Kaye. This is a collection of short stories that appeared in various iterations of Weird Tales over the decades, from its foundations in the 20s to, I'm assuming, sometime in the 80s. Weird Tales is one of the earliest science fiction and fantasy and horror magazines that has a very checkered publication history. Even though it is quite foundational, there are years, maybe even decades, where Weird Tales is not actively being published. And so I read a few short stories for Horror Mayhem, which is one of the big booktube events in May. And so I read on Thursday. I started with T. Michelle by W.J. Stamper. It's a story set in Haiti about an American businessman who's, I'm not entirely sure if he's there to buy stuff for his business or if he's there on vacation. But he's acquainted with a bartender or bar owner who I thought initially was like a rum wholesaler or distributor, that basically the American bought his rum from this Haitian T. Michel. But it's like eventually works out to where he's like T. Michel owns a bar. He was formerly a fisherman. And so the American realizes that de Michel has only served him from one of the two casks at his bar, and that only the local police get served from the right-sided cask. And eventually he learns why and is rather disgusted by that. Although I'm not entirely sure how horrifying it is. Although maybe it would have been more horrifying back in the 20s and 30s than it would be today, where it's more, this kind of storytelling is a bit more blasé. Which is one thing I noticed with a lot of the stories I read in this collection, whether they were meant to be more horrific or more fantastical, was that there's a similarity of style that I found a bit dated. So I also read The Sombrous Tower by Kenneth Lee. This is about a knight who goes to face his doom, where he's supposed to go to this weird tower. And as he goes on this journey, he meets a number of fantastical beings and never quite reaches the tower. It's sort of a weird loop thing that I'm not entirely sure I liked. Well, I didn't like it. There was just no real conclusion. It was just, is that it? Even though Kenneth Lee does have a very interesting style, the story didn't work. Um, I also dipped into In the X-Ray by Fritz Leiber, which is about a young woman who may or may not be attacked by her deceased twin sister, which wasn't interesting at all. The Seed by Jack Snow, which is about an explorer who gets infected by a weird flower that is sort of my same issues with De Michel was in this one. And then today I dipped in a little bit to The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Robert Bloch, which is about a young man who gets taken in by a magician, a stage magician, although he seems to go insane. And then I more fully read Skulls in the Stars by Robert E. Howard. This is a Solomon Kane story, and it's about Solomon Kane traveling between two small towns, and he encounters a monstrous ghost on the moors and discovers what happened to the ghost's mortal body. And I thought that was pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of the Solomon Kane stories. And then I ended today's reading with The Weird of Vusul Wuthoquan by Clark Ashton Smith. This is one of the Hyperborean stories. And it's about a moneylender who buys some stolen jewels, and the jewels return to the lair of their owner, which seems to be a bit more of a trap for luring in dinner. I rather liked the story. It was pretty interesting, although, again, sort of I think one thing about this style of science fiction, fantasy, horror is that it leaves a lot unsaid, and maybe that is a bit better for certain effects, but I'm more of the, I want to know what's going on. What is this weird cavern filled with jewels? What is the monster? What's its story? And I think maybe the curse prophecy and ending, I have my issues with the story, but I think I quite liked it. I didn't read much more than that, though, because there were some storms today. In fact, we're coming off of about a week of intermittent storms that have been at times quite energetic. Particularly last week, there was a really energetic one, and then today was rather energetic as well for where I live. Yesterday was pretty bad for other people, but anyway. So I think I'm done with Weird Tales. And so tomorrow I'm going to start on a bail redemption attempt for A Brief History of Suburban Killings by Marlon James. And see how that goes, and I guess see whether or not my initial thought that I was going to focus a bit more heavily on classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama is going to work out, or whether or not I might be switching things over more to history. Because I don't know, I had an urge to go on a shopping spree, and that sort of petered out. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But anyway, so that's all I have for today. Also, I might try to do a discussion video on Monday. And then Tuesday, of course, will be tag and then Friday weekly reads, and I don't know what other videos I might be doing. So anyway, BookTube, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for tonight, and I will see you on Monday. So until then, thank you, have a great evening and weekend, and stay safe.